Hey guys, this is Zach with Texas Highlands Construction, and today we're going to be showing you how to shoot fine orange peel texture like a pro. On this job, we are doing the addition of a 400 square foot sunroom. So on the walls here, we've finished the drywall, we finished the taping, the floating, the sanding down, and now we're ready to shoot texture, and I want to show you guys some tips and tricks on how to do it the best way. If you're thinking about using a can of spray texture to do a drywall patch or any kind of drywall finish, do yourself a favor and don't. It's not worth it. It sounds like a great idea. The cans are only 10 bucks, but they do not look good and you will not be happy with the results. All right guys, so we're gonna go over all the materials that you need to shoot orange peel texture like a pro. The first thing that I have here is I'm gonna set up a piece of drywall that we have left over from hanging all the drywall, and this is gonna be a sheet that we can test the spray texture on before we shoot the entire room. We have, of course, the spray texture. This box says spray texture on it, but if all you have is some regular joint compound, you can use that as well. You can use hot mud, which dries really fast. I wouldn't recommend that unless you've done it a lot, and because it dries fast, you don't want the texture drying in your hopper, because then it gets stuck in there and you can't shoot it out, and it's kind of a really bad situation. Here we have a texture gun. These guns will come with 3 orifices on them. Right here we're going to be using the small orifice. It has a small, medium, and large, and for the fine orange peel texture we're going to use a small orifice, but these can be switched out. You just loosen them up and take that out and put the other ones in. Here we have a mixing gun. This is going to be for the mud. You need a air compressor, and I like to use a spare air tank. This helps regulate the air pressure when you're shooting texture. There are 2 things that are very important. One is your mud mixture consistency, and the other is your air pressure and making sure you're getting a constant airflow. And you can use a small air compressor to shoot texture in a room. However, as you're shooting the texture, the air pressure will drop, and that'll lead to different variations in the texture on the wall. And so to keep a more consistent texture, I like to use a spare air tank. If you don't have one, and I understand most people probably don't, you can use this, but you maybe just want to shoot a little bit slower when you're shooting the texture. You're going to want a clean bucket to mix your spray texture in. And you always want to use very clean buckets, because if you have like little flakes or pieces of dirt in your texture, they can get stuck in this orifice hole, and then you can't shoot any mud. And then you have to loosen it while this is full of mud, and it can be really, really messy. You also want to have a bucket of water and an air hose. And also, if you have soap, a cool trick is you can take a little bit of just regular dish soap, you can shoot it into your gun, and then also you can shoot it into your mud mix. So you can just put it in your bucket like that whenever you mix your mud. And what that's gonna do is it's gonna help your spray texture mud go out of your bucket and slide through the gun smoothly. If you don't do that, it's okay, but I want the texture to be coming out of here and onto the wall very smoothly. If your mud is too thick, it can start clumping up, and that leads to variations in your texture, or you might not be able to spray it at all if the mud is too thick. So I get the consistency right on the mud, and then I also use soap to help everything flow. So I'll spray some soap in there, and then I'll rub it around inside there, and that just helps it all go nicely. If you don't have dish soap, you can use a little bit of WD-40. Just spray a little bit in there. All right, so we got our spray texture here. When you open the box, this is important. You don't want to skip this, and I'll tell you why. When you open it, you want to take your plastic like this, and you want to wrap it around the sides of that box and pull down on the plastic. And the reason why you do this is because depending on how fresh the mud is, this is pretty fresh mud, but sometimes at the store, if you get a box that's been sitting for a while, the edges here will start collecting a lot of the dried mud bits. And when you take this and you put it in your bucket, those little dry mud bits will go inside the bucket. You mix them up, they go into your gun, and they get clogged in that little hole. And when you have this full of mud and you're spraying texture on the wall, and it gets clogged, it won't shoot anymore, and then you have a big mess on your hands because you're gonna have to take it apart and clean it out. All right, so when you're pouring the mud, you wanna take your box like that, and just go straight in. Okay guys, whenever you're mixing the mud, typically I'll use a mixing drill. It makes it easier to mix everything, but if you don't have one, you can just use a regular drill and one of these mixing paddles here. All right, the two most important things when you're spraying texture are making sure that your mud consistency is where it should be and that your air is at the right pressure. So I'm gonna show you your mud consistency. Okay guys, right here, so I don't have an exact mixture of water to mud ratio. I just kind of eyeball it. Whenever you're mixing it and you lift your gun out, it should be hanging off like that and have like a few drips. And that once you get to that, you're good to go. Your mud consistency should look like this. All right guys, whenever I'm about to shoot texture, the air compressor can be really loud, so typically I'll take it and I'll set it outside and then I'll run my hoses inside. That way I don't have to listen to the air compressor run the entire time while I'm doing the job. Or if I'm working inside somebody's house, I don't have to be overly noisy and bother them. So we always want to be considerate of who we're working for and being in their home. So we'll take the air compressor outside. So the other most important thing when you're shooting texture is to make sure that your air pressure is where it should be. So on this compressor, it has a regulated pressure on there. I'll turn it up to about 80 or 90 so I can fill this tank. This tank is my spare air tank and it has a little bit better of a pressure regulator on there. And I'm gonna turn it down to about 50 when I'm shooting. And then as the job goes on, I'll kind of test it out to see what pressure is working for me with the gun and the mud mixture I have, but I'll typically shoot around 50 to 60 to fine orange peel texture. Okay guys, we're gonna pour a little mud in the hopper here, just like that. Now we already pre-oiled the hopper so it'll flow out nice and smooth. Now we're ready to spray texture. After you pour your mixture of mud, you want to keep your bucket nice and clean, and that way when you go back to use it, it doesn't have all the dry crusties that I've been talking about. Like that. And that'll get stuck in your gun. Okay guys, so we set up this drywall piece here to do some test runs of spraying the texture. And on my gun, you can see that you have a knob here. This will control how much volume you're shooting out of the gun. And so with the volume and the air pressure, you're gonna kind of tweak those two to get the consistency that you want. So right here on this practice run that I set up, these globs are a little bit bigger than what I'm wanting. This is kind of like a medium to almost heavy orange peel, probably about a medium, but I don't want that. I want to go finer. So what I'm going to do is adjust my volume to be a little bit less, and I might turn my air pressure a little bit up. So I'm going to come over here to my air pressure tank. Right now, as you can see, it's at about 30. So you notice whenever I started spraying, it dropped a lot, and that told me my true air pressure. So I'm going to turn that guy up, and I'm going to turn it to about 50 there. Now it should be we should be where we want. Oh yeah, looking much better. And that's the consistency that we're looking for there. Nice fine orange peel texture. If you don't have an extra piece of drywall to do a spray texture test run, you can just set up some plastic here and we can just shoot that. And that'll be like what I'm looking for on the texture. So I like it, so I'm gonna go with it. I'm not gonna adjust my air, I'm not gonna adjust my volume on here, and I like the consistency of the texture, so this is gonna be a good job. So we're ready to spray texture on the wall. Whenever I go to spray it, I'm gonna move my gun in a circular motion across the whole wall, and what this is gonna do, it's gonna keep the texture at a random pattern. I don't wanna shoot like a straight line and then go up and shoot another straight line. You wanna just do like an oval circular pattern, and that'll help keep your shot hidden. And then also, whenever you shoot the texture, you wanna keep the angle of your gun the same throughout the entire job, and the distance from the gun away from the wall the same. If you start turning the gun at angles, you're gonna get a different glob size on the wall. So you wanna keep everything consistent whenever you're shooting the texture, along with going in a circular pattern. All right guys, so now you know how to spray texture like a pro. If you have any questions, leave a comment and I'll get back to you. If you want to see me shoot any kind of different types of texture, just let me know and I'll make a video of that. Stay tuned for more videos on how to do drywall patches and how to shoot texture.